Now, Republicans are continuing their attack on poor people with a bill called the End Taxpayer-Funded Cell Phone Act. Now, that obviously seems very, very clear in its intent to end taxpayer support of cell phones for the poor. Now, that legislation was recently announced by Republican representatives. Now, the bill itself goes after what they call the LifeLine Program. Now, the LifeLine Program actually allowed landline phones to be subsidized by the government. Now, President Obama expanded that. That's where you get Obama phones from. But actually, this was started under President Ronald Reagan. In addition to mobile phones, it also includes some basic broadband internet access. Now, the idea behind this, of course, was to allow low-income people to have access to cheap communications devices, especially since technology has progressed. And look, I know that there's a lot of pushback against this program. Again, you've got the Obama funds are giving all this free stuff. Well, you know what? I've actually known people who've had a Lifeline phone. Trust me, it's not like you're getting something that's top of the line here. You're not getting an iPhone. You're getting a $10 burner phone at best. The kind of phones that you find at the gas station. Okay? So, and look, some people might be like, well, if they're so cheap, Jeff, why don't they just buy them themselves? Why don't they use their own money? Well, because sometimes people can't afford a $10 phone plus minutes. And besides, if you want these people to get jobs, right? Well, what do you need to get a job? It helps to have a phone so you can get a call back from an employer. You can't just walk into a job or walk into a store, ask for a job, and then have them not call you? That seems stupid. As far as the internet access goes, you can't walk into a place of employment that's hiring and fill out an application there. A lot of places will say, well, we don't have applications, go fill one out online. So that's where we're at here. So you kind of need a phone for a job callback, and you kind of need the internet to fill out a lot of applications. There are very few places now that actually take paper applications anymore. Again, a lot of it is online. So you need to have the resources to do that. And that's what this program helps with. And look, a lot of public libraries, for example, they do have internet, but some happen to charge you to use it. Not all of them, of course, but there are some that do charge you to use it. So yeah, the internet and phone to the LifeLine program, that actually makes sense, and that actually helps people be able to get jobs. Now, with that in mind, here's why Representative Scott, who brought this program out, who's trying to kill this program, this is the reason why he wants to kill it. He said, hardworking American taxpayers are already overburdened and should not be forced to pay for a program that is vastly expanded beyond its intended scope and is riddled with waste, fraud, and abuse. Waste, fraud, and abuse. So, hey man, did you expect anything different? The Republicans, they use that excuse for every government program. So, and also expanding it beyond its original purpose. Hey man, Reagan, Saint Reagan here, he said, okay, we'll throw you a bone and cover landlines. But now cell phones and internet access, oh my God, here we go. Expanded way beyond its original use. But that law is very old, and they didn't have that technology in 1985. Things were actually a lot different in 1985. Again, you could just walk into a job and they would interview you and decide whether or not on the spot, whether they'd hire you or not. Oh, now it's a lot different. Now you need a phone for a callback. Now, again, you need the internet in order to fill out a lot of job applications. So it would make sense to change the policy, update the policy for the modern world. And Republicans look at that and go, oh my God, no. We are not going to update the policy. In fact, we're going to say the original terms, which is landlines only. No Obama phones. None. Okay, anyway. Now, as for the taxpayer being overburdened part, I actually agree with that 100%. The working class and the middle class are actually being overburdened. When voters say, hey, man, we're getting taxed left and right by the government, they're actually 100% correct. That's not because the government hates you and wants to take all your money. No, it's because the corporations and the wealthy don't pay their fair share of taxes. And when they don't pay their fair share, well, guess who ends up paying it? They shift that burden over to you. Corporations, they say that they pay 35%, but actually they don't pay anywhere near that thanks to tax loopholes, deductions, all sorts of gimmicks. You also have things like the investment tax at 15%, capital gains. That's the tax that I'm talking about, which taxes that capital gains income at 15%. That is a lower rate. So a lot of CEOs will take advantage of that and be like, well, I'm just going to take my compensation in the form of tax capital gains, so I don't have to pay that 35% or 39%. So that's some of the reason that they get away with not paying their fair share. And again, that money ends up going to you. Like, you're going to have to pay that money because they can't. So yeah, if you're saying, hey man, I am overtaxed, you're absolutely right. But it's not programs like this that are doing it. And actually, this program doesn't have anything to do with taxes. Now, let me explain, but first, let's go to the waste, fraud, and abuse. Now, Scott continues. On June 29, 2017, the GAO released a report which detailed numerous instances of use and oversight gaps in the LifeLine program. In particular, the program's free cell phone plan. Among finds in the report, GAO investigators found that $1.2 million in cell phone subsidies went to fake or deceased individuals. Oh, no. And more than 36% of cell phone program subscribers, 1.2 million of 3.5 million, could not be verified. The ever-increasing fraud and ballooning cost to the taxpayer also puts a burden on cell phone service providers, driving up the cost for consumers and limiting the quality of service. So they're actually wrong about those last parts, but they're actually right about the report. The GAO did come out with a report, and the results were, of course, devastating when it comes to the program. Now, what's interesting, though, is that this whole program could be, or this whole problem could be avoided if the program had a little bit more oversight. According to the Washington Post, when government auditors posed as LifeLine applicants, approaching as many as 19 telecom carriers with false personal information, a dozen of the requests were approved, indicating that the companies who are responsible for verifying potential customer eligibility were not reliably screening out fraudulent applicants. So wait a minute. So the fraud here, right, is because the companies themselves are required to screen the applicants, and they weren't doing so. You let the companies take control of that. Hey, corporation, go ahead and screen your own applicants to this government program. It's okay. We'll leave it up to you. We're pretty sure that you can handle it. When you leave it up to the companies are going to obviously cut corners. They're going to be like, who cares? We're not going to look into it. It's not our money. We're not losing anything from this. In fact, we're gaining from this. So we're getting the subsidies. Oh, so here we go. So there's no oversight. Now, that's not the only thing that's wrong with Scott's assumption. Ars Technica also explained that while Representative Scott is saying this to protect consumers from having to pay taxes they shouldn't have to pay, there's actually nothing in his legislation that would actually save any taxpayer money whatsoever. That's because LifeLine is not funded by taxpayer money. It's actually funded by cell phone bill surcharges. Interesting. So no taxpayer money actually came out of that. It all has to do from surcharges added on by cell phone providers. Now, this bill would not return those surcharges to the consumer. So you would save no money. In fact, if they completely defund the program, this passes, right? And they defund the program, you're not going to save any more money as somebody who has a phone. You're still going to have to pay that surcharge. Well, where does that money go? Now, the bill would prohibit multiple phone providers and mobile data providers from receiving LifeLine funds. However, it wouldn't change the amount of money that is collected from the carriers in 2018. The bill says that excess collections that would no longer subsidize mobile service shall be deposited in the general fund of the Treasury of the United States for the sole purpose of deficit reduction. So you understand that? You're not going to save any more money as a taxpayer. You're not really paying anything at all in taxes. You're just getting charged extra by the phone companies. And instead of it going to actually helping people afford a phone so they can possibly get better jobs and get off welfare programs, that money's going to go to instead at deficit reduction. Essentially, let's screw over the poor and use that money to cover the deficits we created as Congress by our endless wars in the Middle East and giant tax cuts for the rich. Now, notice how Republicans, they never want to take responsibility for their massive spending programs when it comes to the military and when it comes to giant tax cuts. Now, look, they want to call Obamacare a huge driver of the deficit, but actually, Obamacare actually added money into the system through progressive taxation. So this was not a program that added to the deficit, that added to the debt. It actually reduced the deficit, as with a lot of progressive programs. Look, most of the programs that progressives put out and the Democratic Party puts out actually saves money. For example, free college tuition. People think, oh my God, no, that's going to cost trillions and trillions of dollars. But they forget that we already spend trillions and trillions of dollars, and a free college system would replace all the different, for example, grant programs, subsidies, tax breaks that colleges get, student loan program, and all that stuff. And not only that, but the government could use its leverage to help negotiate lower tuition prices for colleges, for students. It would actually be cheaper. There's been studies on this that say that if we completely gut our system right now when it comes to college affordability and institute a free college for all plan, that would save the government money, billions of dollars each year. Same deal with Medicare for all, right? You would replace the for-profit insurance industry with a single option, the government, which would, of course, eliminate all your subsidies. It would cut down on administrative waste, advertising costs, executive bonuses, all that stuff that government money goes into insurance companies, right? And it would also give the government leverage to negotiate drug prices and healthcare costs with the doctors and hospitals directly instead of going through third parties. Because right now, what we have is a multi-payer system. So, doctors get paid from a multitude of other sources, some of them government sources, some of them from your pocket. And again, the subsidies, tax breaks, and all this stuff going to the insurance companies, which have a profit motive. And so there is a definite reason for them to raise rates since they're getting some of this government money. So, look, programs like these would actually reduce the deficit and long-term debt through taxes and decreased spending on the different subsidies and bullshit that you would have to work through a market-based system. But see, Republicans, look, they want to talk about how they're the party of fiscal responsibility, right? How come that every time we've had a Republican president, they massively blow up the debt? Look, the last Republican president to balance the budget was Dwight Eisenhower. And this is the guy who warned us against the military-industrial complex. The modern Republican Party, and sadly the Democratic Party, love the military-industrial complex. They do all sorts of spending on the military. Look, we have a military budget of over $600 billion a year. That's absurdly expensive. Absurdly expensive. We cannot afford to do that. But somehow, while on the one hand saying we don't have enough money for healthcare to cover everybody, but we've got more than enough money for bombs on Syria. Missiles that cost millions and millions of dollars to launch. It's ridiculous. Not only that, but again, you're cutting taxes massively for the rich for, in the name of trickle-down economics. Well, let's see how that worked out. Let's, go to Kansas if you want to see how that worked out. It didn't. And then they give subsidies and tax breaks for their giant defense contractor buddies. And, of course, they get us into endless wars, which sadly, again, our Democratic establishment friends are more than happy to continue when they get elected. But my whole point is, it's not cell phone programs for the poor. As flawed as they are, and they could be fixed, and they should be fixed, that's not what's wrecking the taxpayer. What's wrecking the taxpayer is, unfortunately, neoliberal corporate establishment policies and Republican right-wing policies. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.